Completing the capture of Saguntum, Hannibal began planning to cross the Alps to invade northern Italy. Moving forward in the spring of 218 BC, Hannibal was able to sweep aside those native tribes that attempted to block his path and entered the mountains. Battling harsh weather and rough terrain, Carthaginian forces succeeded in crossing the Alps, but lost a significant part of their numbers in the process. Surprising the Romans by appearing in the Po Valley, Hannibal was able to earn the support of rebelling Gallic tribes in the area. Moving quickly, Roman consul Publius Cornelius Scipio attempted to block Hannibal at Ticinus in November 218 BC. Defeated and wounded in the action, Scipio was forced to fall back to Placentia and cede the plain of Lombardy to the Carthaginians. Though Hannibal's victory was minor, it had significant political repercussions as it led to additional Gauls and Ligurians joining his forces, which raised his army's numbers to around 40,000. Rome's other consul, Sempronius Longus's army then marched to join Scipio's on the Trebbia and set up camp alongside it. As Scipio was still partially incapacitated by his wounds, Sempronius took overall command. In 218 BC, the two armies established camps about 8 kilometers from each other on opposite sides of the river Trebbia. The Romans was on an easily defended low hill to the east of the Trebbia, and the Carthaginians was on high ground to the west. Sempronius was eager for a full-scale battle. He wished it to take place before Scipio fully recovered and so would be able to share the glory of an imagined victory. From the enthusiastic way in which Sempronius had reinforced his cavalry, Hannibal felt confident that he could provoke a battle at a time and place of his choosing. The combined force which Sempronius led into battle included 4 Roman legions. Polybius gives a total of 16,000 Romans, Livy 18,000. In addition, there were approximately 20,000 allied infantry, comprising 4 Latin allied legions. There were also 4,000 cavalry, a mixture of Romans, Latin allies and Gauls. Hannibal had arrived in Italy with 20,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. At Trebbia this had grown to 29,000 infantry, which include 21,000 close order and 8,000 light infantry, and 11,000 cavalry. In each case they would be a combination of Africans, Iberians and Gauls. The proportions in each case are not known, other than that 8,000 of the close order infantry were Gauls. In addition, there were the elephants, the survivors of the 37 with which he had left Iberia. In order to surprise the enemy, Hannibal sent his younger brother, Mago, with 2,000 men to take position in the cover of night along the banks of the Trebia River. The next morning, either 22 or the 23rd of December, was cold and snowy. Shortly before daybreak, Hannibal sent his Numidian cavalry across the river to force back the Roman pickets and provoke a fight. Meanwhile, the rest of his army ate an early breakfast and prepared for battle. When the Numidians appeared, Sempronius ordered out all of his cavalry to chase them off. The Numidians easily scattered and retreated, but afterwards wheeled around and attacked with great daring, these being their peculiar tactics. The confrontation broke down into a wheeling mass of cavalry. But with the Numidians refusing to withdraw, Sempronius promptly ordered out first his 6,000 skirmishing force and then his whole army. He was so eager to give battle that few, if any of them, had eaten breakfast. The Numidians withdrew slowly and Sempronius pushed his whole army after them. large number of light infantry in each army, entirely javelin men for the Romans, a mixture of javelin men and slingers from the Balearics for the Carthaginians, skirmished between the main armies. The Roman light infantry had used many of their javelins against the Carthaginian cavalry, while the Carthaginian skirmishers were fully supplied. As opposed to their opponents, the Romans were unfed, and also tired and cold from having forded the Trebbia. And the slingers among the Carthaginians outranged the Romans by some distance. For these reasons the Carthaginians got the better of the initial skirmishing and drove the Romans back through the gaps in their supporting heavy infantry. The Carthaginian light infantry then moved towards the flanks of their army and harassed the Roman cavalry with their missiles, before finally falling back behind their own cavalry as the gap between the armies closed. The Carthaginian army formed up symmetrically. The 8,000 Gallic infantry were in the center. On each side of them was a formation of 6,000 African and Iberian veteran infantry. On the far side of each of these were half of the surviving elephants, and on each wing were 5,000 cavalry. The Romans too formed up symmetrically. The Roman heavy infantry were in the center, perhaps 13,000 strong. On each side of them were part of their allied force. The survivors of the 6,000 light infantry were regrouping to their rear. Like the Carthaginians, the Romans divided their 4,000 cavalry between their wings. On each wing 5,000 Carthaginian and 2,000 Roman cavalry charged each other. The Roman cavalry were not only outnumbered, but their horses were tired from chasing the Numidian cavalry, and many had been wounded by the fire of the Carthaginian light infantry. Both encounters ended rapidly, with the Romans fleeing back over the Trebbia, and most of the Carthaginian cavalry pursuing them. As pressure on the Roman cavalry grew, the flanks of the infantry became unprotected and open to attack. Sending forward his war elephants against the Roman left, Hannibal next ordered his cavalry to attack the exposed flanks of the Roman infantry. With the Roman lines wavering, Mago's men sprang from their concealed position and attacked Sempronius' rear. Nearly surrounded, the Roman army collapsed and began fleeing back across the river. With their morale already sapped by cold, hunger and fatigued the Romans on the sides, and in the rear broke formation under this fresh onslaught and ran for the river. As the Roman army broke, thousands were cut down or trampled as they attempted to escape to safety. Meanwhile, the Roman infantry in the center routed the 8,000 Gauls facing them, as well as a unit of African heavy infantry, and broke clean through the center of the Carthaginian army. By the time they halted their pursuit and reorganized, it was clear the rest of their army behind them had dissolved and that the battle was lost. Sempronius, who was fighting with the Roman infantry, ordered them away from the site of the battle and, maintaining their formation, 10,000 of them recrossed the Trebbia and reached the nearby Roman-held settlement of Placentia without interference from the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians concentrated on pursuing and cutting down the partially surrounded balance of the Roman army. As with many battles in this period, precise casualties are not known. Sources indicate that Carthaginian losses were around several thousand of the Gallic infantry in the center, a smaller number of his other infantry and of his cavalry, and several elephants, while the Romans may have suffered up to 32,000 killed, wounded, and captured mostly the Latin allied force and light infantry. The victory at Trebbia was Hannibal's first great triumph in Italy, and would be followed by others at Lake Trasimene and Cannae.